is a good idea, and I'm gonna just very quickly, because I just didn't listen to some of the conversation, or some of the things. We're gonna go real fast. I'm just gonna show you some questions you can use and let you know where you can find the rest of these slides, so that way you can, if you want to take this stuff back. What were some of the things you talked about? What are some things that you could change structurally within your own zone of control in your school? Or did you just all talk about lunch? It's okay. Yeah.
Having the vision statement in our school, sort of re-envisioning what our mission statement is and what our vision statement is, and having that up everywhere.
Right.
I was just at SLA last week, and I was amazed to saw those 5 points everywhere.
Yeah, you cannot throw a stone without hitting the word inquiry on a wall somewhere.
But that
That's
common
right.
language is,
That's right.
is important.
Yeah.
All alternatives to final exams, we had some success over this last 2 years of reducing down to 2 instead of 1 at the end of each trimester.
Which is awesome. What else did you talk about? A couple other examples? Yeah.
Identifying who the change agents can be within the community.
Awesome. Absolutely. Who are those folks who will? Identifying the change agents. Who are the people in your school who can push this? And of course, of equal importance is who are the people that you got to work on. We call this the rule of thirds, right? With any new initiative that you have. Number one, every good teacher worth their salt, and I learned this from my mother, knows how to outlast an initiative. Right? So, I don't need to explain that any further. So learning how to make things sustainable. I mean, the trick is to win the middle, right? Because a third of the teachers will go with anything that you do. A third of the teachers will be resistant to anything you do. What your success is driven by is if you can win the middle. How do you win the middle? And other people call this the 20-60-20 rule, which is called the rule of thirds. We're easier. But if you can win the middle, you actually do bring up the top. I mean, bring up the bottom. But if you lose the middle, the top leaves over time, or gives up, or closes their door, or whatever. What else? One other thing that someone talked about, something they could change within their own school or classroom. Yeah.
Just getting our kids to stand up. We have a couple projects that we've got overwhelming interest in, and yet when we have 50 kids and 2 of us trying to reach that same goal, it's hard to sort of get them all focused and moving in the same general direction. So we talked about empowering by communicating to maybe a core senior group and then letting that.
Absolutely. You know, one of the programs we have, and again, I didn't invent it, I stole it, is something called the senior assistant teaching model, where seniors who, let's face it, how many, I mean, again, I don't think this is unique to public schools. How many people have a disease in their school? It's called senioritis. Okay. So one of the ways we combat that is we have seniors teaching as assistant teachers in our freshman and sophomore classes. It's a credited class. They get a credit for it. They work with mentor teachers, and they are now caring about something outside of their own self, which for a 17-year-old is a win of nearly proportion. And it combats senioritis, which is wonderful for them, but it also reinvigorates and reinvests all of our younger kids into the culture. It's how we acculturate kids into SLA, is they have nearly adult learners in their classroom with them. And it's an amazing way to transmit those values. And if you can win it in 9th and 10th grade, you don't need to win it as much in 11th and 12th grade. It's a great way to sort of bring that culture to your school. All right, to honor the time, it is important that I think that stuff like this, like I said, student-centered learning, right? If all this was a lovely way to spend a couple hours, then it didn't do anything. Now the job is for you to be leaders in your own communities, to continue this conversation. What I like to say, invite your parents, invite your students, invite teachers, invite whatever your community is in them for a Saturday, buy them pizza, and have this same process. Ask them what they want the school to be. Ask them how they're going to get there. Listen to what they say, right? Because it is the kids' education. And it's their world that they're going to inherit. They need to have a stake in this. And so do we as parents, and what have you. And obviously, when you have these conversations, and I already heard it from several people, is the challenge that you guys face is you have parents who have written large checks for a specific brand of education. And now you're saying, well, we want it to be slightly different. We're very different. So who are the stakeholders? How can you bring people in? What are the fears you need to address? Because those are real. When a parent says to you, but what's this going to do to the SAT scores? What they're really saying is, are you going to screw up my child? That's a real fear. So we do have to honor that. We do have to mitigate that. And yes, at SLA, we teach an SAT prep class. We teach it online. Why? Because we know that the best way to learn how to take a test is to take tests. So we're going to teach you a class on how to take tests. Because we want to honor that. Because the fact of the matter is that my kid, who scores 1,500 on the SATs and has a straight A average at SLA, ain't getting into Penn if the kid down the street who went to a school where the learning was nowhere as deep and nowhere as meaningful and not as powerful, and they can't do what my kid can do, but they scored 1,800 on the SATs, that kid's getting into Penn. So we make sure that we honor that by saying, we're going to get your scores up when we need to. We're just not going to pretend that it happens in class. We're going to outsource it. But that's real. Because to deny that is to deny the real part of school, which is part of our job, is to set them up for the next stage of their lives. Now, I think teaching them to think and be creative and collaborative and powerful and da-da-da-da gets them there too. But they also got to jump through the hoops. And to deny that is to be revolutionary at the expense of your kids. I think you got to keep asking these questions and don't settle for easy answers. All of these things are hard. When people say, I've got all the answers, chances are they're full of it. So just be aware of those folks who will come in and say, I've got the solution. All you got to do is everything I tell you, and you'll be good to go. And then I think here are some of the hard questions you ask. What are the worst consequences of your best idea? If you do not ask that question, you are doomed to fail. Because what happens, and we all know this in education, right? Education tends to be a somewhat reactionary profession. Which is we try something new, something bad happens, and we regress immediately back to the way we used to do things. Because it's safe. I've got a good idea. Let's give 500 teenagers laptops. Nothing bad could ever happen. Did we think of everything that could have possibly gone wrong? No. But we thought of a lot of them. And then when the stuff that happened that smacked us in the face that we didn't think of, because we went, okay, what are all the problems going to be? When the thing that happened that we were surprised by, we didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because we've been through that iterative process of what's going to go wrong, how are we going to mitigate. And so we knew how to handle, at least process-wise, what to do when something went wrong. That's really, really important. I think you have to ask yourself, what are the obstacles to change? And how will you overcome them? It's not just enough to have a vision, then you got to have a plan. Don't forget to slow down. It's really important. This stuff is important. And it's really nice that I can say this to you guys, and I can't always say this where I go. Your schools work. In your rush to change, don't kill yourselves, don't kill your kids. Your schools work. They do great stuff. I've met your kids. Change, but do it in a way that doesn't kill yourself and doesn't kill the kids, because if we don't model living a healthy life for our kids, we're not doing ourselves a service also, and that's important. Right? And so here are some of the questions as you deal with that you have to ask. Your life as a teacher is different in this model. The kid's life is different in this model. How will you deal with that? At SLA, at the end of every quarter, it's benchmark season when they're doing across sort of a month, 5 or 6 really real, authentic, meaningful, powerful projects. Think about that. 4 times a year minimum. To say nothing of all the smaller projects along the way. Authentic, real, powerful, collaborative projects. I say to our staff all the time, don't kill the kids. And don't kill yourselves. Because now imagine trying to grade 120 real, authentic projects 4 times a year. Your life is different if you do this. You have to figure out what that's going to look like. I think the other thing you got to think about is how you organize. This can't be teachers versus parents versus kids versus administrators. This has to be everybody pulling together, right? We've got to, and I think, and this is where I'm going to say, and it shouldn't just be school versus school versus school. And I know that it's hard because, school X is competing against school Y for the same kids, and it's a difficult economy, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But stuff like ADVIS is really powerful because not every school has got to figure out every last thing for itself. Organizing so we can change our schools together, and including, God forbid, a couple of public schools. Hey, just saying. Isn't a bad thing either. Never forget that this is about learning for yourself as well. And if you do this, this is the thing that drives me crazy. And again, I think you see this more in public schools, but it still drives me crazy. We talk a lot about how schools should be transformative for kids. They should be transformative experiences for children. To me, it is the ultimate act of hubris to think that we could change the life of a child without being changed ourselves. The hardest thing about my job is trying to live up to the vision of who Mr. Lehmann is in the kids' eyes. The hardest thing I have to do is try and be as worthy of being that person. And I am a better person for trying and failing frequently to be the person they need me to be. It has transformed the way I see myself in the world. And that's true for every teacher in my building, and that's certainly true for our kids. We can create institutions that make all of us better. Not just, it is the ultimate act of saying this isn't something we do to kids. This is something we do with kids. And the values we have, what we want for our kids, we must want for our teachers, and we must want for ourselves. That's the last thought I have to leave you with. Here's all my contact information. If you go to slideshare.net/Chris Lehmann, this slide deck or a version of it is up there. Feel free to steal it, use it, take it back to your schools. If really cool things happen, just let me know. It's always nice to hear. Thank you so much for your time.
schools with a great deal to share, and this is just a small token of our appreciation.
Thank you very much.
I challenge each of you to do what Chris asked, which is to go back to your schools. We have the capability, you have the capability not just to share these slides and to use these questions, but because Springside's wonderful tech crew has recorded this, you can actually encourage your head of school, your other administrators, your teachers to actually view this entire presentation today, later, and we will be sending out that link. This is a first for us to be able to allow you to go back to your schools and actually share the the recorded presentation. And I really encourage you to do that. Thank you so much for being here today.